Hi everyone. Welcome to English Story School. Part 1. The question that will change everything. Have you ever stood at the edge of your dreams, looking at what you've always wanted, but felt like you're inches away from giving up? It's that gut-wrenching moment when failure seems inevitable, when the darkness of your past mistakes clouds your vision of the future. And yet, in the face of all that fear, what if I told you that every great success story doesn't start with a smooth journey, but with a struggle so raw, so unyielding, that it pushes you to rise above everything you once feared? Let's start there. Picture this moment in your mind. You're standing at the crossroads of your life, unsure whether to take another step forward or turn back. For some of us, the fear of failure is enough to stop us in our tracks. But here's the truth. Failure isn't the end of the road. It's simply the beginning of something far greater. Now, let me take you on a journey, one that will challenge everything you think you know about failure, willpower, and what it really takes to push forward when everything inside you screams to stop. This is the story of Arif, a young man who, just like you or me, faced a moment of decision that would determine whether he would rise or fall. His journey was no different from the battles we all face, one filled with doubt, fear, and a relentless inner conflict. But the story doesn't end where many would expect. Arif's was a battle of unbreakable will, a refusal to accept failure as an option. Arif had a dream, a burning passion to create something that would change his life forever. But like so many dreamers, reality slapped him in the face. His first attempt at launching a business was a complete disaster. Every plan, every hope, and every strategy crumbled beneath the weight of reality. Debt piled up, investors pulled out, and his dream felt like it was slipping through his fingers. Imagine standing at the edge, watching everything you've worked for unravel, thinking, "This is it. I'm done." But then something happened. In that moment of deepest despair, when every part of him wanted to walk away, Arif found a spark, a tiny flame that refused to be extinguished. He stood there, questioning everything. What made some people succeed, while others, like him, failed? Was it luck, skill, or was it something else entirely? Here's the thing that changed everything for him. Failure isn't a punishment. It's an opportunity. The opportunity to learn, to grow, and to come back stronger. The moment Arif understood this, a shift occurred. Failure wasn't something to avoid. It was something to embrace. And that's the moment he realized he wasn't done yet. He wasn't even close. But there's more. You see, in life, it's easy to let the weight of our failures crush us. It's easy to let the judgment of others or the fear of public embarrassment define our future. But here's the truth that will set you free. It's not the failure that defines you. It's what you do after the failure that matters. What would you do if you were standing at the edge of everything you've ever dreamed of? Would you turn back, defeated by the past? Or would you dig deeper, finding the strength to rise from the ashes of your former self? This was the question Arif had to answer. And in the quiet moments of his most trying times, he realized that the road ahead wasn't paved with easy steps or quick fixes. It was a journey that demanded everything he had. Every ounce of his being had to be invested into proving that failure wasn't a destination, but a lesson in resilience, persistence, and the sheer will to succeed no matter what. Arif was no longer fighting for success. He was fighting for something greater. He was fighting to prove that no matter how many times life knocked him down, he would always rise again. And that, my friends, is where the journey truly begins. As Arif stared at the wreckage of his failed business, he heard the words of Thomas Edison echo in his mind. "I have not failed. I just found 10,000 ways that won't work." It wasn't about getting it perfect. It was about getting back up. Now, let's pause and think for a moment. What about you? Have you ever been in a position where you felt like failure was knocking on your door? Have you ever felt like you were standing at the edge, not sure whether to step back or leap forward? What if that moment of fear was actually the exact point where you needed to push through? What if you're just one step away from turning everything around? This is where Arif's journey intertwines with yours. Because what you're about to learn in this story isn't just about Arif, it's about you. The unbreakable will to rise above every challenge and every setback isn't reserved for the chosen few. It's within each of us. So as we move through Arif's story, remember, failure isn't an option, not because we avoid it, but because we choose to keep moving forward despite it. Stay with me, because this story has just begun. Part 2, The Darkest Hour. Arif had always been driven by an intense desire to succeed. From a young age, he had dreamed of becoming a successful entrepreneur, of building something that not only changed his life, but also left a legacy. He had vision, passion, and an unshakable belief that he could make it happen. But, as is the case with many of us, life wasn't so kind. It seemed that every time he took a step forward, he was knocked back even harder. His first business venture, the one that had consumed him for months, collapsed within 6 months. He had invested all his savings, his time, and his heart into it. And then just like that, it was gone. No matter how hard he worked, no matter how many late nights he sacrificed, the world seemed indifferent. It didn't care about his dreams. It didn't care about his struggles. His second attempt wasn't much better. The failures stacked up. His savings dwindled to nothing, and his once optimistic spirit was now broken, piece by piece. It was in those moments of quiet despair, when Arif was alone with his thoughts, that the words of those around him started to echo louder. Maybe you should quit, Arif. Not everyone is meant to succeed, they said. They were the voices of friends, family, and even strangers, well-meaning but ultimately toxic. They were voices that didn't understand the fire inside him. They didn't see the years of sacrifice, the sleepless nights, and the countless hours spent fighting to make his dreams a reality. And that's when it hit him. He could easily follow their advice. He could listen to the noise of doubt, to the opinions of others, and just quit. After all, it seemed like the logical thing to do. But there was a deeper part of him, a part he had long neglected, that whispered, failure isn't an option. Arif knew that most people would stop right there. Most would give in to the pressure, to the weight of their failures. But not Arif. Arif wasn't like most people. In those moments of darkness, when the world seemed to be telling him he wasn't good enough, he decided to fight. Instead of falling victim to his failures, he chose to rise above them. In his lowest moments, when it felt like the weight of the world was too much to bear, he found himself clinging to the words of Winston Churchill. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Those words became his anchor. He realized that failure was not something to fear, but something to learn from. Failure wasn't a wall, it was a lesson. And the key to success wasn't avoiding failure. It was embracing it and using it to fuel his fire. Every night, as the world around him slept, Arif worked. While others were out socializing or resting, he studied. He read books, listened to podcasts, and absorbed every piece of knowledge he could find. He learned from his mistakes. He learned from the failures that had once seemed insurmountable. Most importantly, he learned to perfect his craft. He didn't just want to succeed. He wanted to understand why he had failed, so that when he tried again, he would be stronger. Each failure, instead of breaking him, became his teacher. And with each lesson, he grew more determined. He told himself that the next failure wouldn't be the end. It would simply be another lesson in the journey toward success. He was relentless in his pursuit of improvement. As others doubted him, Arif was building his future brick by brick, refusing to let his past failures define him. He believed in the words of Albert Einstein: "Failure is success in progress." And so he pressed on. He didn't care about the opinions of those who told him to quit. He didn't care about the failures that haunted his past. He was driven by something deeper, something more powerful, an unbreakable will. He began to see failure for what it really was: a temporary setback. It wasn't a reflection of his worth. It didn't define who he was. Instead, failure was just another step in his journey. It was proof that he was pushing boundaries, reaching for something greater. And the more he failed, the more he learned. With each setback, Arif grew stronger, wiser, and more resilient. The world had given up on him, but Arif was just getting started. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he was no longer afraid. In fact, he welcomed the challenges ahead. With every failure, he saw an opportunity to grow. He wasn't just fighting for success, he was fighting for something deeper. He was fighting to prove that failure isn't the end, it's just the beginning. Arif's journey was far from over. But in those dark, quiet moments of despair, he had made a promise to himself: failure will never define me again. And with that promise, he took the first step toward the greatness that awaited him. Part 3. The Breakthrough. Weeks slowly turned into months, and as each day passed, the weight of failure began to feel unbearable. Every step forward seemed to be met with 2 steps back. Arif's resolve was tested like never before. The dream he once held close to his heart now felt like an unreachable mirage, a constant reminder of how far he still had to go. He was tired of failing, tired of being rejected, and tired of carrying the burden of dreams that seemed to mock him at every turn. But in the midst of all this doubt and fatigue, something shifted. It happened one late evening under the dim light of his desk lamp. The world outside was still, and the quiet hum of his laptop was the only sound in the room. He had just received another rejection letter, this time from a potential investor who had shown interest in his business idea. Another door slammed shut. It was becoming all too familiar. As he sat there, feeling the weight of it all, something unexpected happened. A thought, almost as if whispered by the very winds of fate, struck him. Failure isn't defeat, it's a lesson. For the first time in months, the crushing weight of his failures didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like a guide, like a nudge in the right direction, urging him to understand that each rejection, each misstep, was not a sign to quit, but a sign that he was still on the path. He thought about how far he had come, not in terms of success, but in terms of growth. Every failure had given him something invaluable. Every mistake had taught him something he could never have learned from success alone. Arif remembered a quote that had once resonated deeply with him, but had only now begun to take root in his heart. "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times, I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed." Those words by Michael Jordan echoed in his mind, reverberating through every fiber of his being. Failure doesn't mean you stop trying. It means you're still moving forward. In that moment, it clicked. Arif understood something profound. Failure wasn't a reflection of his worth. It was simply a part of the journey. It was proof that he was still moving forward, that he was still in the game. Every missed opportunity, every rejection, was just another step toward his ultimate dream. He wasn't stuck in failure. He was learning, evolving, and refining his approach. Failure was no longer his enemy. It had become his greatest teacher. For the first time, Arif felt an overwhelming sense of clarity. It wasn't just about the business anymore. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong or achieving success to validate himself. It was about the process, the journey, and the relentless pursuit of his vision. He no longer viewed obstacles as barriers. He saw them as stepping stones that, when conquered, would build the foundation for his success. With his unbreakable will, Arif pushed forward. He kept his eyes fixed on his dream, even when the world around him was clouded with doubt and uncertainty. Every obstacle he faced, whether it was a rejected proposal, a failed partnership, or a sleepless night, only fueled his desire to push through. Arif knew that the road to success was never a straight line. It was winding, bumpy, and unpredictable. But that was the beauty of it. Every challenge, every failure was an opportunity to grow stronger, to become wiser, and to move closer to the vision he had held onto for so long. He wasn't naive enough to believe that the path would be easy. Arif had learned that nothing worth having comes without its struggles. But he had also learned something far more valuable. That success wasn't about avoiding failure. It was about moving forward despite it. It was about finding the strength to keep going when every part of you wanted to give up. As the weeks continued to pass, Arif found himself more driven than ever. Each rejection no longer stung as much as it once did. He now viewed them as opportunities to refine his approach, to learn more about his business, and to grow into the person he needed to be in order to succeed. With every setback, he asked himself, "What can I learn from this? How can I improve?" One evening, as he reviewed his business plan for the 100th time, Arif realized something powerful. He wasn't failing because he wasn't good enough. He was failing because he wasn't yet the person he needed to be. Success required more than just a good idea or hard work. It required evolution. It required him to grow, adapt, and become stronger with every failure. And so, he began to see every failure not as a wound, but as a tool for self-improvement. With each day, Arif's unbreakable became his greatest asset. It wasn't just about pushing through the failures. It was about learning to love the process of growth. The dream, the vision, wasn't just an end goal. It was the person he was becoming along the way. And as he reflected on his journey, he realized that the failures he once feared were, in fact, the very things that had brought him closer to his breakthrough. Arif wasn't just surviving the struggle anymore. He was thriving in it. The breakthrough he had been searching for was no longer some distant, unattainable goal. It was within his grasp. And all he had to do was keep moving forward. With his unbreakable will, he had come to understand the most crucial lesson of all. Failure is not an end. It's the beginning of something greater. Part 4. The Triumph. Months passed in what felt like a blur, each day a continuation of the one before, yet Arif's journey had irrevocably shifted. The relentless drive that had once seemed futile now bore fruit. His third business attempt, a venture he'd poured his soul into with the lessons of failure deeply embedded in every decision, began to gain momentum. At first, the signs were subtle. A small order here, a positive review there. But with each passing week, the signs of something much bigger started to materialize. It wasn't an overnight success. Far from it. The road remained rocky, full of twists and turns that threatened to pull him off course. Arif faced doubts that echoed in his mind late at night, moments when the weight of the world seemed too much to bear. There were technical failures, financial hurdles, and even moments when it felt like his dream would slip away yet again. Yet this time, Arif was different. He had been forged in the fire of failure, and the resilience he had built made him unshakable. He no longer feared failure. Instead, he had learned to embrace it as part of the journey, an integral, necessary part of the process. He welcomed the challenges, for he now understood that each one was an opportunity for growth. Where once failure had been his greatest fear, it had now become his greatest teacher. Arif wasn't just going through the motions anymore. He was growing evolving, adapting in ways that made him stronger with each challenge. The man who once doubted his ability to succeed was now facing down obstacles with the confidence of someone who had been there before, someone who had survived the worst and came out the other side victorious. The young man who had once been broken and on the brink of giving up was now on the verge of something incredible. Then came the moment he had been waiting for. The very investors who had once rejected him, those who had turned him away with polite but firm refusals, began to show interest once again. This time, however, it was different. They weren't just intrigued by his idea. They were eager to support him, to back him in a way they hadn't before. They saw in him something that went beyond business acumen or a great idea. They saw in him the unbreakable will to persevere, the tenacity to keep going when the world said stop. With this newfound backing, Arif's business began to grow. It wasn't just financially, it was gaining traction, attracting customers who believed in what he was doing. Word spread quickly, and people started to take notice. They didn't just see a successful entrepreneur. They saw a man who had been knocked down time and time again, yet had never given up. They saw a person whose journey had been defined not by the victories, but by the ability to rise again, no matter how many times he had fallen. Arif's story became one of inspiration, a beacon for anyone who had ever faced failure and wondered if it was the end. His journey wasn't one of magic or serendipity. It was one of hard work, unwavering determination, and an unyielding will to succeed, no matter the cost. He had learned, over time, that success was never about avoiding failure. It was about learning from it, growing stronger with every setback, and moving forward with an unshakable belief in oneself. And just as Robert Collier once said, success is the sum of small efforts, repeated day in and day out. Arif had put in those small efforts repeatedly. Each day, he had shown up, even when things seemed impossible, even when failure stared him in the face. It wasn't about intelligence or luck that brought him success. It was the strength of his will, his unbreakable will, that refused to accept failure as an option. His journey was proof that success doesn't come to those who are born lucky or to those who avoid failure. It comes to those who have the strength to keep going, who choose to believe in themselves when no one else does. It comes to those who are willing to take that next step, even when the way is uncertain. And as Arif stood on the threshold of this new chapter, looking at the fruits of his labor, he knew that his story was far from over. It had just begun. The triumph was sweet, yes, but it was the journey, the persistence, the unbreakable will that had carried him this far, and it was this same force that would propel him forward, no matter what the future held. Part 5. The Lesson Learned. Let me ask you a question. How many times have you felt the urge to quit? How many dreams have you tucked away, telling yourself that failure had won, that it was the end of the road? I want you to think about those moments when doubt creeps in, when the weight of your struggles feels like too much to bear. Now, what if I told you that those very moments of doubt aren't signs that you're on the wrong path, but rather they're part of the journey you're meant to walk? What if failure, the very thing you fear the most, is the secret to success? Arif's story, the journey you followed with him through every setback, every failure, every triumph. That story is your story. It's the story of every single person who has faced defeat and thought, this is it. I can't go any further. But Arif didn't stop. He didn't allow his failures to define him, and neither should you. His relentless spirit, the same spirit that refused to be broken by adversity, is the same spirit that lies dormant within all of us, waiting to be awakened. You see, failure is not a sign to quit. It's proof that you are closer to your breakthrough than ever before. Think about it. Every failed attempt is not a full stop. It's simply a comma a pause before the next big leap forward. It's the universe's way of testing you, challenging you to find the strength within yourself to continue. Arif learned this lesson over and over again, each time a little more deeply. And it wasn't an easy lesson. The pain, the frustration, the countless nights spent wondering if it was all worth it. It could have broken him, but instead, it made him stronger. It gave him the resilience to keep pushing forward, even when everything seemed impossible. Arif discovered that the road to success is not paved with ease. It is paved with persistence, with an unbreakable will to keep going no matter what. And this is where we all find ourselves at some point. The struggle, the doubts, the fear of failure. They don't mean that success isn't meant for you. In fact, they often mean just the opposite. They are signs that you're getting closer, that you're walking the path that's meant for you. As Franklin D. Roosevelt once said, "The only limit to our realization of tomorrow is our doubts of today." What if you stopped doubting yourself? What if, instead of allowing failure to hold you back, you used it as the fuel to move forward? Think about Arif. He had every reason to quit. He could have let the failures of the past define him, but instead, he chose to use them as stepping stones. Every rejection, every misstep was just another opportunity to learn and grow. The more he failed, the more he realized that failure wasn't an obstacle. It was a gift, a part of the process that led him to where he needed to be. So, if you're facing failure right now, remember Arif. Remember his story, his relentless spirit that refused to give in. Embrace the struggle, because without it, there would be no growth. You see, failure isn't an option, not when you have an unbreakable will. It's not about avoiding failure. It's about moving forward through it, because it's the resilience to keep going, the courage to rise after every fall, that truly defines success. If there's one thing that Arif's journey teaches us, it's this: never let failure be the reason you give up. Every time you face a setback, every time you think you can't go on, remember that success is built on the foundation of persistence. It's the people who keep pushing, who keep learning, who keep growing, no matter how many times they fall, who eventually succeed. And with that, I leave you with this final thought. Failure is not a dead end. It's the fuel that powers your success. So, embrace every challenge, every failure, because they are leading you to your breakthrough. And remember, just like Arif, you have the strength within you to rise again and again. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.